Second page is a presentation by Ms. Rebecca Underhill, Assistant to the City Manager Budget Officer, regarding Hurricane Harvey and fiscal year 2018 budget. I know you're here.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here. Good morning. At the last meeting, if you'll recall, Mr. Vasquez, the finance director, spoke about the financial condition of the city as of the end of January, and I came forward with some information for the council as to how we were pursuing funding as it relates to Hurricane Harvey recovery. Today, I want to bring all that information together in the perspective of the budget, both this year's budget and the budget going forward into 2019. That process is going to be beginning very soon, and we need to put everything that we're doing right now into perspective of the budget. I want to preface my comments by saying the numbers that you see are going to be, some of them are going to be pretty large, and they're estimates. They are still estimates. We're working every day. The finance department is working every day to refine those estimates. But at this point, they're still estimates. But we do have a large picture, a large view of what we're facing. So that's right. There we go. Thank you, Brian. On the January 31st report, Andy reported that to date we had spent $22.17 million on hurricane-related costs. Those were broken down into these four major categories. $12 million was for debris, $4.4 million for personnel costs, $4.9 million related to equipment, and $800,000 for other costs. Those might be supplies, other costs that were incurred during the storm. So I'm going to talk about each one of these categories in detail real quickly. On the debris side, that $12 million, that is funded, that is a 90-10 split between the federal and local share. The state has come in and is picking up the local share, so that should be covered almost entirely by federal and state resources. There is some amount of cost in there that we have been recently notified is not going to be covered, but we feel that it's a relatively small amount. On the personnel side, during the storm, all city employees were paid pursuant to our personnel policy. And I've gone into detail, and I've given you printouts of the packet. I've gone into detail about the payments that were made to employees. The first section relates to employees that were not required to report to work. Those employees continue to get paid. That payment was funded through those city budgets as those employees were budgeted positions. The next section is Section 17-157E of the Personnel Policy. In addition to inclement weather pay, non-exempt personnel, that would be your what we would call your hourly as opposed to your salaried personnel, would be paid their hourly. In addition to that inclement weather pay that the other employees, the non-working employees, received, the hourly employees that were working would receive that pay in addition to the hours that they worked. This payment should be eligible for FEMA reimbursement, and we will make every effort to recover those funds. And then overtime for employees that worked over 40, that is eligible for reimbursement, and we certainly are working on the paperwork right now to get that money recovered. Okay, on the next page, Section 17-157H of the Personnel Policy. That part of the policy begins with, in case of a disaster that reaches the severity and magnitude to warrant an emergency declaration by the president. Well, that provision in the policy makes those payments ineligible for FEMA reimbursement. So we are going to continue to work with them. We are going to try to get reimbursement for everything that we possibly can, but payments made under this section of the policy are at risk for not being reimbursed. And that's an estimated cost of nearly $2 million. That would be for your salaried personnel and your civil service personnel. On the equipment, as Andy reported, to date, $4.9 million had been spent to replace damaged vehicles and equipment. That was what had been paid for as of January 31st. To date, $6.78 million has been authorized by the council to purchase equipment. Of that, $6 million is being funded through a lease purchase arrangement. That was for the garbage and trash equipment. The remainder will need to be paid for with city funds and with insurance proceeds. Insurance to date has been received in the amount of $1.3 million. Replacement of damaged equipment is eligible for FEMA reimbursement, but it is eligible at actual cash value. That is the same coverage we have under our insurance. So FEMA is not going to pick up anything in excess of our insurance payments, which is actual cash value, not replacement cost. The total value of all the equipment that was reported as damaged. Now, a lot of this equipment is being put back into service as it's being repaired. We just don't have final numbers on what equipment was totally destroyed at this point. But the total cost of all the equipment that was reported damage is $24.8 million. We do not expect to have to replace all of that equipment, but we do expect to replace quite a bit of it. And I don't have the cost of that replacement. And the only funding that I have identified for that is that actual cash value insurance that we will receive. So what is the potential risk? I truly don't know. Right now I'm working with a number of $15 million. That number could be high. Again, the equipment services, Mr. Christopher and his crew are working very hard to get as much of that equipment back into service as they can. But we're looking at some pretty large numbers right now that we need to find funding for, and we felt that it was important that the council be aware of what we're trying to manage our way through right now. On the real property, the buildings and facilities, I went over this with you at the last meeting. To date, we've received $2.7 million in flood insurance payments on the 24 buildings, 60 lift stations, and other facilities that have been identified. We are working with the insurance coverages. We met with TML last week. We're continuing to work to maximize those payments. We have 3 buildings that are under repair with TML directly right now through their turnkey program. We do expect that there's going to be other costs that the city's going to need to pick up, whether it be deductibles on the insurance, whether it be upgrades, whether we have opportunities for mitigation projects. Those are FEMA projects that have a 75-25 split. The city would have a 25% cost share on that, but this would be opportunities to improve facilities so that perhaps they wouldn't be damaged or damaged to the extent they were in a future storm. Again, this is just a ballpark. Say we could spend $2 million on those types of projects. Could be more, it could be less. Those decisions will be at the council's discretion as we get to that point. So that's where we are with disaster and disaster funding. And again, I know those are large numbers, but let's put those in perspective with the budget. So the fiscal 2018 budget included the use of $7.5 million in operating fund balances and $8 million in capital project fund balance. This is a reduction in savings, basically. The projected fund balance at the end of 2017 was $49.87 million, with the balance reducing at fiscal year 18 year end to $34.6 million. This reduced the operating balances near the policy limits. This $7.5 million in operating funds will not be available to be used for fiscal 19. It's like your savings account at your house. You can use it once. You can't use it again. So if we look at the budget as a baseline budget, the 18 budget is the beginning of the 19 budget, we're $7.5 million short to start. For fiscal 2018, Dr. Tomei talked to you a few weeks ago about the shortfall in the water utility revenue. His estimate right now is that the 2018 revenue is going to be $3.3 million less than what was in that budget. Now, everything is not gloom and doom. When you have a storm like this, we experienced it after Rita and after Ike. Folks are having to rebuild. Everybody's having to rebuild. So sales tax revenue's up. Based on the current trend, our sales tax revenue will exceed the budget by over $1 million. So our net shortfall in operating revenue right now is projected at $2.3 million. Now, again, we haven't really started the budget process. We haven't evaluated and projected all the revenues. We're just looking at these major sources of revenue. We're $2.3 million short. Going forward to fiscal year 19, we know that property tax revenue will be impacted by that storm. We know that there are thousands of homes in the city that are not inhabitable, have been damaged. And what that impact right now is we don't have a good feel for. I got some very preliminary numbers from the appraisal district the other day, but they're telling me they're not close to being finished with processing the preliminary information. But I've plugged in a number here of $1 million, knowing that I'm already more than halfway there. So that number, that $1 million number, may not be low enough or high enough it may not be enough of a reduction. Our industrial district, our industrial taxpayers, we have some contracts that are on flat rate payments. They just make a flat rate. They make a payment. They know how much their payment's going to be every year, and we know how much it's going to be. The others are a percentage of what their taxes would be, a percentage of their value times the rate. There are floors in those contracts that those payments cannot drop more than 10%. That's what this $1.8 million number represents. We know that several of those facilities were shut down, they were damaged. That impacts their value. We have no idea how much. That $1.8 million number is a worst case number for our industrial revenue for next year. Andy and I will be going to a meeting at the appraisal district next month. We'll get a better feel. We'll be able to, we will continue to keep you updated as this process goes along. Again, we just wanted to give you a very high level ballpark of what we feel like we're dealing with going into this next year's budget.
If I could stop you there real quick, Ms. Becky.
You can stop me anytime, Mayor Freeman.
Talk to me about the appraisal district since we brought it up. I know we're possibly, if there's some litigation coming down the pipeline, we're going to be throwing some money at it. Is there any other taxing entities, navigation, port, that'll be helping us out in that effort also?
The way the expenses of the appraisal district are funded, all expenses of the appraisal district are shared by all of the taxing entities, so everybody participates.
Yes, ma'am. I think it was from one of our taxing entities, our partners, that from my understanding, JCAD just ran out of money a few years ago when they had a lawsuit they were fighting. So I just want to make sure that we're always involved before they bow out, that they ask us, again,
absolutely,
for some more help.
Absolutely, and perhaps the city attorney can address that. I'm not familiar with that situation, but we do stay in contact with the appraisal district.
Okay.
Again, I know we're going to a meeting up there next month on the appraisals for this year, and I know there's some hearings coming up on some major taxpayers too, and we're paying attention to all of that, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, the hearing is the main hearing of concern is on May 7th, okay. And we'll be keeping everyone abreast. All the departments will.
Just talk to me real quick about how the process worked the last time. Is there something that we should do, be more proactive to make sure that they know?
Just as long as we keep in communication with them about, the concerns of this particular taxing jurisdiction. As long as we keep in contact with them and we can keep the communication flowing so we'll know how things are going.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
And they've been very good with communicating with us.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Scott, you had your light on. Did you need to answer?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. My question is, Becky, the $355,000 that TML is supposed to be paying to us as claim, has this money been added in?
Yes, sir. And I thank you for that. That was included in the $1.3 million that's been received for vehicles. Yes, sir.
And it did say that we can go back and ask for more if possible. They may be able to issue supplemental payment.
Yes, sir, because we're continuing to process those claims. That is language to assure us that that's not our final payment from them.
Okay.
Yes, sir, because we're continuing to work through those claims. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great question.
Right, thank you.
So as we finish out this slide, so we've got the $1 million in property taxes, $1.8 million in industrial revenue, and again the $7.5 million of operating balances that we wouldn't be able to use again. So we're starting the fiscal 19 budget with a potential reduction in revenue of $10.3 million. And that is exclusive of water rates. And Dr. Tommy is going to talk to you about water rates next. But that's exclusive of water rates. So anything that is not done in the water category would just add to this. So to add up all my negative numbers, personnel expenses, equipment replacement, property damage, revenue, $31.5 million could be what we're looking at going into next year. Short, based as we look at the budget for next year. So what are we doing right now? I mean, we can't wait till October. We feel like we've got a pretty serious financial issue. So what are we doing right now? So right now we're looking at all that equipment. As I said before, Mr. Christopher and his crew are going through that damaged equipment and trying to get as much of that running as possible. There was $3.7 million included in the fiscal 18 budget. I put it in here wrong. I'm sorry. I was reading my own typo. In the fiscal 18 budget for equipment. We're going to look at every one of those pieces of equipment and see how critical that is to continue current operations. There are a number of vacant positions throughout the organization. We are looking at every position to determine what we have to have, what we can defer, what we can delay. We're starting that budget process earlier than I think we've done it in the past here. We're going to start next month. We are going to look at every department line by line and person by person and make sure that we need to have everything and maintain the service levels. And again, I don't want any, when I said person, I didn't mean person. I meant vacant position. To make sure that we need all those vacant positions to maintain service levels. Because we feel like, and I'm speaking for Mr. Robinson now, and he can stop me when I go awry. We feel like we've got a financial problem here, and we need to recover from this storm, and we need to do what we need to do to get the city back in a position to continue to serve the citizens. Of course, there's always options to raise revenue. And the last thing that I'll mention is there's a significant amount of money in the budget this year in the capital projects fund, and that I know is dedicated to streets projects, and I know the streets need the work, and so I'm not suggesting. I'm just reminding the council that money is out there. We have a lot of work to do, and we feel like we need to start on that immediately. And we're doing that, and we wanted to bring the council along with us and let us know, let y'all know what we're doing, and we'll keep you updated as we go. And we certainly welcome your comments and your questions.
Thank you, Councilman Doucette.
Good morning, Becky.
Good morning, Mr. Doucette.
Okay, let's go. The first one is equipment.
Yes, sir.
Okay. City manager. We need a report on equipment. what equipment is not operable and what department that equipment belongs to. If we have replacement vehicles or equipment for those or not, okay? And the reason we need to report, and at the next meeting, the reason is it's summertime, grass is growing,
Yes, sir.
okay? There are certain things we need to do.
Yes, sir.
That's parks with tractors to cut ditches, okay? You mentioned streets.
Yes, sir.
I'm definitely interested in the status of the street equipment because, yes, we put money in the budget for this year, so we haven't been doing them, and I understand equipment, but we want to know exactly where that status is.
Okay.
Now, we're going to do some streets. We got to. And we really need to access the equipment. We have to provide service.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if we don't have the equipment to provide service, then we need to either have it ordered. Well, it should be ordered already, period. Okay, or we need to lease it.
Mm-hmm.
But we need the equipment that provides services. I'm interested in water utilities, streets, and solid waste. Those are the three components that no matter what we went through, it's gone now. We still have to
Yes,
provide
sir.
services, and we need to make sure that we have equipment. I know we won't have everything, but like the grade alls to cut ditches, we got to have equipment. And right now, we know we lost a lot of equipment. We've been doing this since August.
Yep.
But numbers, what departments, we don't know that. What we trying to fix, what we talking about, we may not want anymore. We need that type of report
Okay.
in order to understand where we are so that we can have some input, because
Absolutely.
streets, park and recreations, solid waste, and water utilities is a priority. That's where all our complaints and problems are.
Oh, I understand.
Okay.
And I'll remind the council that the solid waste equipment was ordered early on, and it has been purchased and it is coming in. I don't know the status. I don't know if it's all in, but it has been coming in steadily. There's a very long lead time on that equipment, but it has been coming in. As far as the detailed list, we have a detailed list. Again, it's still, every day it changes as we update information, but we can certainly pull that together for you. Yes, sir.
Well, it's changing, but we want to know what the
Yes,
changes
sir.
are.
We can do that.
Okay? We want to know.
No
okay?
problem.
Equipment update coming in.
Yes, sir.
City manager, can I ask a request of you that in the future meetings that we be given an update on what's on order and what we've received, and we talked about it before when we ordered the equipment. We really need to be aggressive about that equipment, and
Okay.
if we order something and it doesn't come in, and we just, it ain't came in, or they say this now. If we paying for it, and everything you order, they give you a prospective delivery date. They tell you in March. Well, if in April, if you haven't gotten it, it ain't time to be nice. If you can't produce it, we paying you for it. You're not doing us no favor. We'll buy it somewhere else. But we need to get aggressive with getting this equipment in. Okay. So if we could get that along with the report, City Manager, that kind of help us to kind of stay abreast of what's going on. Thank you. Property tax revenue. Yes, it's going to affect us in the sense that they're going to be reducing the property taxes for next year. Well, for 18, right, for 18. Right. So
it'll be the 19 fiscal year.
Right. So it'll be our 19 fiscal year because we start in October.
Right.
They're going to be dropping it in January. Okay.
Yes.
So yes, we're going to lose. The taxes for sale tax. You saying 1 million. You're being very, very conservative, aren't we?
That is the trend so far based on the increase this year over last year. This is a number that, I actually did the math on that one. And so based on the trend of how much we're up over last year for the first 4 months, going through February, first 5 months. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if we do that trend, that's kind of out of whack because, almost all the homes, we had 80% of homes destroyed, okay? And people buying stuff to rebuild and all the stuff. It's a ton of money being spent. Yep. So a trend may have been 1 million, but under the circumstances, I think what we should do is try to get with the controller and see what sales tax looks like in this area. I think we get a pretty...
We get a report every month of how much our sales tax is, and on the controller's website, you can see it every month, and you can see it compared to the last several years. I can't remember how many years it goes back. Every month, month to month.
Well, I'm just looking at what we're doing here because it tells us.
No. And you can see it by the city of Port Arthur.
Right.
And for folks that are interested, you can go see what the city's doing. You can see, you can see a countywide number.
Because normally, if you compare in years, you'll be having a certain amount. It's a roller coaster. Okay,
yes, sir.
People buy, people build during the summer when it's slow. However, it's a fact that this is going to be a pretty consistent sales tax because people are going to be building, at least throughout the end of the year.
To your point, February is always the biggest month because that's Christmas.
Right.
December. But you're right. We're up every month.
That's
it's
right.
not just February.
Yes.
And we're up every month. And right now it looks like $1 million. I hope it's more. And that's a number that we look at every month.
It better.
When that payment. Yes, sir, I do. I do. Every month. It's one of my favorite days. Sales tax day is a great day.
If it's not, basically we're going to have a whole bunch of people without their homes fixed. Okay.
Well,
Now, the last one, and I had checked on your briefing, is vacant positions. Okay, that is another thing that we need to get updated on and brought up to snuff, because once again, areas for tracking, park and recreation, solid waste, water utilities. I understand that, money's going to be hard. And I tell you, you and the city manager, I dread being y'all shoes. Normally the worst time of year for any council and staff is a budget cycle. But to have the disaster we've had and knowing we're going to be spending money, knowing we're going to have shortfalls, it's going to extra hard. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we keep in mind we still have to get these services, and there's the key areas. Just like I talked about that equipment for these departments, I'm going to talk the same about personnel. If we're going to do without somebody, I can't see us doing without somebody that's performing in those three departments.
I understand.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
sir.
I don't get nobody called. I don't get no calls about nobody in the offices up here. But if they trash not picked up, they garbage not picked up, if they sewage backing up, if grass in the ditch, so those 3 departments
No, I
is
agree.
what keeps the people out there happy.
Yes, sir.
They're already on the warpath. We don't need to give them no arrows and bows and muskets and machine guns. This is a real good briefing, though. I like this briefing, City Manager, keeping us up to date on all the different areas. I just think if we get a little bit more detail with equipment and personnel, then, you know, I'll be a happy camper because I'm looking for those 3 departments.
Yes, sir. I heard you, and we certainly, as we look at all of those things, we don't want to make decisions that are going to impact the citizens where we can avoid that. Certainly.
Yeah, that's right. Y'all gotta make my job easy.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
That's my job, sir.
Thank
I understand.
Councilwoman Moses.
Hi, good morning, Becky. Thank you for the report. It really enlightens us and brings us, gives us a better picture, a view of where we're coming from. And with that being said, as you traveled through from last year's budget to this year, did you find, what was the budget balanced?
Well, the budget's balanced in that, fund balance is a source of revenue. You can use fund balance, and absolutely, balances go up and down, and you use it, and a lot of the money is going into the capital projects for streets and into equipment and other things. And the city has policies about fund balance and what's a reasonable fund balance to maintain.
So the budget,
and you're still within those fund balance parameters. So don't get me wrong. You're still within those fund balance parameters. The problem is we had this storm, and all of these costs and the impact to revenue that this storm is going to have. I think my concern about revenue is that this storm is impacting revenue worse than the others did, than Rita and Ike. We had a dip in property values after Rita, but because everybody lost their roof. But this one, you have so many homes, multifamily complexes that what was their value on January 1st? Were they restored? Were they livable again? Yeah, not so much. And so the value is going to reflect that. And the appraisal district, rightfully so, has asked that people report to them what damage they've had. Let the appraisal district know your property taxes based on the condition of your property on January 1st, and they need to know. And that is absolutely the right thing to do, but that impact is going to be on our budget. Yeah. And so we need to be prepared for that.
Right. So basically, though, going into hurricane happened in August, as we got ready to go into the budget year, our budget from last year, we had to pull from reserves to balance that budget.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
That's how we balanced the budget on last year, by pulling from savings.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Good morning, Becky.
Good morning, sir.
Councilman Duce just stole my thunder. I had the same question about vacancies.
Yes, sir.
We've been inquiring about vacancies before Harvey hit. We was beating on that that horse about vacancies, and we're still doing the same thing. So we need people. We need personnel. So if at all possible, I'd rather see you, the city manager, and whomever, Christopher, finagle the equipment, numbers, before we mess with the vacancies. I want to see things, people hired, people, put to work. Okay. And what I'm saying, sometimes it could be over-equipped. We might have 20 dump trucks before, pre-Harvey. We only need 15. We might have had 20 trash trucks before Harvey. Might only need 10. So we're trying to take a good hard look at equipment, number-wise. We can cut back on those, instead of cutting back on vacancies. That's my concern.
Okay.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you this morning. You have no other lights.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
We'll now move to our next, city manager. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. I simply wanted to mention that we have a number of pieces of our equipment that we put back in service. We have 3 grade-offs, typically 2 are back in service. 1 is currently in the shop to be repaired. We hope to have it back in service by next week. We have 3 street sweepers. I'll get it out.
Tongue twister this morning.
Yes, it's not operating very well. One of those units is still to be determined. One is in the shop. The other, I believe, we have back in service. We have one Vector unit. One Vector unit we put back in service. Unfortunately, it went down the next day. It's currently in Houston being repaired. We've rented one. I think it came in yesterday. So we will be able to do some of the drainage, blowouts, etc. Parks and Recreation, I believe that they've received just about all of their equipment in. It was ordered early on. When we talk about Public Works and the trash units, we ordered 9, 4 are in. We were able to put 5 of our old units back in service, so we should have a total of 9 out in operation right now. When we talk about personnel, that's a very, very difficult situation to look at. We're going to try and identify those essential services. Once we've identified those essential services, we will go ahead and make sure we fill those positions. It's a process. It's not an easy process, but we will pursue it diligently. I can't guarantee you what the outcome will be, other than, again, we will try and make the proper determinations. Critical service delivery is important to us. By the way, we have, I think, what do we call, I used to call it a guzzler. I think it's a recycler unit. It's my understanding also that we should have that back in service within the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Scott?
City manager, that's the kind of update stuff we really happy to hear. You know, maybe I should have called you and got that. But that type of information, detailed information, is something that we can share with citizens when they call us. And that type of information that you just gave us is very important. So I appreciate you updating.
We will try and do better in the future.
Okay. Appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.